Ladies and gents, boys and girls, Monday, May the 8th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. As always, appreciate you all tuning in. I see John, Edward, Brendan, GA, Xavier, Travi, Will Hall. What's going on? Adam Ritter. What's up, Panic Ritter? Appreciate you tuning in as well. We got a packed show, lot to get into here on this Monday. I see Justin Langford as well. Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel, the TDC Questions channel, to be sure your questions are answered there. Guys, we have got a jam-packed show for you today. A ton to get into. And, of course, always, we're taking your questions, your comments, your calls as well. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Also, a very big day on the TSUS side of things. More on that in just a second in regards to what we have going on behind the scenes and going on with content and everything in between. Of course, guys, as always, TDC is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go down to the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use that promo code TSUS to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Guys, you can play literally anything and everything. College sports, pro sports, you name it. They've got it over at Prize Picks. So many fans and listeners of the Daily Crow and of the Spurs Up Show have made tons of money with our friends at Prize Picks, and you should as well. So again, go download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use that promo code TSUS to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Be sure to check them out and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent you. Again, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Of course, in case you missed it, we've also got my good friend Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. He will join the show today at 1:15. Really excited to talk with Mark as we break down, some gambling lines have come out. The win totals from our friends over at DraftKings, some early game of the year spreads, if you will, from our friends over at FanDuel. So we always have a ton to discuss when it comes to college football and Gamecocks football. Also, of course, what happened over the weekend, South Carolina losing all three to Kentucky. I know it's a bit of a therapy Monday, if you will. South Carolina, though, still finds themselves in the top 8, in position to be a top 8 national seed. Obviously, have to take care of business these last 2 weekends. But the Gamecocks are 6th in the latest D1Baseball.com top 25 in case you missed it. Guys, again, other than that, taking your questions, comments, calls, 843-790-3377. Jonathan Lee says, hey, Chris, what's your take on the Diggs running back from Notre Dame that visited this past week? Do you feel like we got a chance to bring him here? Definitely a big help to the offense. If so, yeah, Jonathan Lee, that's a big one. That's a big one. I mean, for obvious reasons, at a position of need. I think our friend J.C. Sherbert will have more intel on that later in the week, but I would say that it looks like right now, if you just go off of like crystal balls and what people are saying, it sounds like LSU is probably the team that is best in line to land his services. But I think certainly the Gamecocks are going to have a compelling sales pitch when you just think about the fact that, Shane Beamer mentioned that nobody's just handed a starting job when they come in, but I think they're certainly going to be telling Diggs, hey, you have a great opportunity to come in here and to compete for our starting running back position. I think that's most definitely what you're telling people. Hey, we're not just going to give it to you, but we are looking for that RB1, and we think potentially you could fit the mold if you come in, win the job, take care of your business, etc. Graham Holden says, told y'all Auburn was going to beat LSU. I should be a college baseball expert. Some of these quote-unquote experts are idiots. Well, Graham, the beauty is this. The internet exists, my friend. If you want to go start a college baseball podcast and talk college baseball, talk Gamecocks baseball, what have you, the internet exists. The internet exists, my friend. You can do that. That's the beauty of 2023. That's just the beauty of it. Rebecca, what's going on? It's been a long time since we've heard from Rebecca. Appreciate you, Rebecca. Glad to hear from you. Great to have you tune in as always. Okay, I had do not disturb on the phone lines. I apologize. So, guys, the phone lines are now open. 843-790-3377. Also, guys, check out the podcast that dropped this morning. Episode 782 of the Spurs Up Show dropped this morning on our podcast feed. Of course, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. We talked about everything from a very, very busy weekend. Of course, baseball, football, gambling, the transfer portal, your listener questions, a packed podcast this morning. And guys, really excited. I know GA commented a little bit earlier. Back to normalcy. It does feel good to be back to normalcy in regards to the content. TDC rocking as normal this week, noon to 2, Monday through Friday. Podcast drop this morning. Will drop again on Thursday. Guys, think about this. What's crazy? We've got this month, obviously. Next month, which will be baseball heavy. There'll probably be some recruiting mixed in there, probably some gambling, some lines will continue to drop, and maybe some football here and there. But it'll be baseball heavy. July 4th happens. After July 4th, we'll go back to Monday, Wednesday, Friday podcast. Looking forward to that. And of course, that's when we start in early July. That is when we start our preseason coverage. It's crazy. We start talking Gamecocks football all the way back in early July, and we go through July, we go through August, and then, of course, the season here. We spend 2.5 months breaking down the 2023. We spend 2.5 months breaking down just the football season as a whole. It's a lot of fun. But right now, of course, in the midst of baseball season, a lot of fun with that as well. But again, guys, whatever you guys want to discuss, 843-790-3377. You can call that number. You can text that number. Whatever you like. Like I mentioned, guys, a really, really big content day for TSUS because immediately following the Daily Crow today, we will hit the road, and I'm doing an in-person one-on-one interview today with former Gamecocks defensive line coach Brad Lawing. Brad Lawing will join the show. That interview will drop on the podcast on Thursday with video as well. We'll have clips, of course, as we always do, but really, really excited to talk with Coach Brad Lawing. I see my guy Brendan just commented in the Big Cock Club Discord, just randomly lost power. Fantastic start to my week. And I was sitting there thinking, did my audio, did my video, did it just go off? But I think we're good. But either way, going to hit the road, talk with former Gamecocks defensive line coach Brad Lawing. Really excited, man. Brad is a living legend. Really appreciate him allowing me in his home to sit down and, again, talk Gamecocks. It'll be about a 30-minute conversation or so. But, of course, in case you did not know this, Brad Lawing coached new Gamecocks defensive line coach, Travian Robertson. So going to be really cool to get his perspective on that. Obviously, the 2022 season. We have not talked to Coach Lawing since around this time last year. I think it was the end of April or end of May or something like that. Around this time last year, I actually went to his home and we talked to Coach Lawing. And so really, really looking forward to getting back in there. Going to be a lot of fun. Also, guys, we have radio at 4:40. I'll be jumping on with Mark Ryan to talk everything. I'm sure we'll touch on everything, football, baseball, basketball, everything in between. You know the drill. Just talking Gamecocks. And then, of course, like I said, on TDC today, Mark Rogers. Mark Rogers joins the show at 1:15. So that's coming up here soon. We will talk all things Gamecocks and SEC and college football for that matter. Also, guys, this morning, I don't know if you saw this, if you're on Twitter, I jumped into a Twitter Spaces. It was actually a Tennessee Volunteers Twitter Spaces. I want to start doing that more often, though. I really do. I think it'd be a lot of fun to kind of touch on some of the other fan bases. And if you're tuning to this show and you're familiar with me and kind of the, I don't know if plans is the right word, but in regards to expansion of the business and growth and those things, if you will, becoming familiar with other fan bases and other fan bases becoming familiar with me and my work and my commentary, I think could be very beneficial for us all, right? And I just love, who doesn't just love talking college football and just talking ball, if you will. So that was a lot of fun. Went in there, got in a Tennessee Spaces. My guy Jake Crane was in there as well. So we got to chat for a little bit and conversate and banter, and it was a lot of fun. But I might start doing that more often. I think that's something that could be a lot of fun. And, looking forward to we're going to go through the month of June into our opponent preview series. So we'll have a lot of different perspectives in that month, especially as we break down every single opponent on the Gamecocks 2023 football schedule. Really, really good stuff. But anyways, guys, taking your questions, comments, calls, 843-790-3377. Oh, by the way, one more thing. I had teased this before, and for a little bit, not a ton. I had teased this before, though. But many of you are probably familiar with Behind the Beak, right? Many of you are probably familiar with Behind the Beak and what Behind the Beak was. Behind the Beak was our vlog series, right, in which I was just shooting video, whatever it might have been, me at games, random, whatever. And that was dropping once a week on our YouTube, okay? And the reason I stopped doing that is I've talked about this before, guys, in business and content and merch and everything else, right? We only have so much time. Like, I only have so much time. I'm one man, right? And so you have to really look at things. It's like you weigh what's an efficient use of my time and what is not. And when I was just looking at content and things that I felt like were worth the effort or maybe not so much worth the effort, the vlog was one of those things where it was like I really enjoyed doing it, but I felt like, is the audience really getting the value out of this? Like, you know what I mean? Is this really driving the value that I'm looking for and I'm seeking? And I'm someone, guys, I fail quickly in content. I fail quickly. If something's not popping, if it's not working, if people don't find joy in it, they don't find enjoyment, I'm not going to continue to beat a dead horse and just keep on doing it. So, for that reason, for others as well, I decided, let's put the behind the beak stuff on pause. Well, I am very excited to say that Behind the Beak, starting tomorrow, will be back in a different format, though. So I got a good friend of mine. I want to shout him out, Taylor Desson, who we've had on the podcast before, actually. He's a Gamecock, but he is a legend in the content space when it comes to recruiting, like staffing. Not talking about football recruiting. I'm talking staffing. Like you try to go find a job, you go to a staffing agency. He is a recruiter for a staffing agency. I don't want to be too crude when I talk about his role or whatever the official role is. Either way, though, Taylor is someone that he does a daily vlog. It's like a minute and a half long. And I taught him about it. He has inspired me to do this in regards to putting together, releasing 3 to 4 per week mini vlogs, just using my phone, right? Versus using the GoPro and releasing one big, like 10 to 15 minute long vlog. Because let's be honest, nobody's watching a 10-minute video anyways. Like unless it's a podcast, like nobody's watching a 10-minute video. Like the days of that are over, right? So I'm very excited to announce that starting tomorrow, I've already been shooting video this morning a little bit, minute to minute and a half mini vlog series. So it's going to be behind the beak, but it's going to be a little bit different. And I think a much more consumable format where I'm going to bring you guys sort of behind the curtain and bring you on my journey, if you will. So I'm excited for it. I think it's just going to be another cool thing in regards to content. Again, getting to see sort of behind the scenes, what's going on. And, one of my favorites to follow is Gary Vee. He talks about document, don't create, document, don't create, document, don't create when it comes to content. I think this will be a great opportunity to just kind of document the journey, really, truly document the journey and everything going on. And again, give you guys kind of a behind the scenes look. And it'll be a very easily consumable thing, right? Minute to minute and a half long where it'll be fit for social media. Going to be a lot of fun. So anyways, we'll see how it goes, right? But this is something I'm going to be doing. It's going to be really easy for me to create. Going to be able to get it out quickly. And, I think it's going to be something you guys enjoy. I'm looking forward to getting your feedback. Either way, let's jump into your questions, comments, everything going down right now. Joseph says, Chris, how do you feel about the Arkansas weekend? I'm actually pretty optimistic, even though I have no reason to be. Maybe it's because we can get some of our guys back and we are due for a bounce back. Yeah, Joseph, I look at it this way. And with that being said, I'll get to your question. I'll answer that in just a second. Let's jump to the phone lines.
Call from
Will from Dirty Myrtle.
Will, it's great to hear from you, my friend. How are you?
Good. How about you, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Appreciate you asking. What's up?
You enjoy your cruise?
I did. It was a good time, and I'm glad to be back. We did a lot of traveling in April and even March, and really throughout the first couple of months of 2023. So, gonna probably lay low key a little bit in Greenville or in South Carolina or whatever. So I'm excited to be back though on the normal schedule and getting after. But the cruise was great. We went on it to celebrate my sister's birthday, and we had a lot of family and some friends there as well, and we had a really, really good time, man. So I appreciate you asking.
Good. Love to hear it, man. So we'll start with the negative. This baseball weekend was another tough one to watch. It just didn't even seem like every game seemed like by the second inning we were already out of it. I just hope that we kind of get our mojo back, man. We were just on a roll there, and I know injuries have a big part in it, but it just seems like we're Petrie's kind of slowed down, which you expected. He couldn't stay at that rate the whole year. Just hoping that, we catch fire maybe the next week or two right in time for the postseason. Because, sometimes it is good in baseball to kind of get that lull out of the way before you hit the postseason so you don't tend to see it again like they did last year. But, just what's your thoughts on what have you heard about Will McGillis and Wimmer? Is that like a this weekend kind of thing, or is that going to be a little bit longer before they get back?
Yeah, and so Kingston actually spoke on this yesterday after the game and said that I think at minimum LeCroy and Wimmer expect to play. They expect to play. McGillis is probably the least likely, but I think he's getting much, much closer. Here's the thing, Will, and I'll say this, and to your point, I'm not hitting the panic button, right? I think that's I think you're missing the mark if you're doing that. But certainly this past weekend was frustrating. The past 2 weekends have been frustrating because you just know we're so much better than that. We've seen it on the field this year. This team is ranked 6th in the country for a reason right now. Still ranked 6th in the country. And I think what that tells you is D1 Baseball believes in this team as well and say, you know what? Hey, they're going through a slump. They're a really good ball club that's going through a slump. They're dealing with injuries, but we know how good they are, right, when they're playing their best. So getting those guys back is going to be key, right? Getting Lee Croy, the Wimmers, getting McGillis back at some point. I don't think you're going to see Noah Hall. I'll just leave it at that. But getting those fielders back, certainly. But, Mark Kingston's made the point that there's really no point throwing them out there 90%, 95%. Like, if they're not 110%, you're playing for the postseason anyways. You know what I mean? Like, the last thing, I mean, is it really worth it to sacrifice or to pick up 1 or 2 wins against Arkansas, but these guys tweak something or aggravate something, and then they're out for the postseason, right? So it's a balancing act because, I mean, we obviously want to get them back as quickly as possible. And, I mean, the last thing you want is they haven't played in over a month, and it's like, all right, well, we're in the postseason. Let's just throw them back in there. But, yeah, so the view right now is hopefully they'll be ready to go against Arkansas. But, it's just a team that's beat up. It's depleted. And I tell you this, though, Will, I'd say this. I said it a couple weeks ago, and I said it sort of tongue-in-cheek because I want the Gamecocks to win every game. But this might not be the worst thing that ever could have happened. Now, this is assuming, in regards to this slump, this is assuming this team hits their stride again and turns it around. But I'd much rather this type of slump happen right now than happen down the road in postseason play. Nobody wants to be Tennessee last year, where you're just hot all year, and then you go ice cold when it matters most, and you fall short of expectation. So, I mentioned in the preseason, our friends over at 11.7, they have the hot, cold, hot theory. As long as this team can get hot again, I got no issues with what we're seeing right now. I mean, it's frustrating. It's frustrating for sure. The game of baseball is frustrating. It is. It's a frustrating game. You just got to keep trucking, keep grinding, keep moving, and you just got to keep your fingers crossed and hope that hot streak on the other side of this is just around the corner, and it will come as this season closes up, and again, we go into the postseason.
Yeah, Chris, my other concern is that the pitching really has, been our strength for most of the year, regardless of who's kind of rotated. And it seems like, man, it has not looked good the last couple of weekends. And Will Sanders, is he ever going to get back to where it kind of seemed like he was getting there, and now it seems like, he couldn't really control much. It just hasn't been the bullpen hasn't been quite as good. Just I hope that it all kind of comes together. You want it. And the injuries, I do want to see them get 110%, but you also, it's kind of that fine window of time of getting them back in time to be able to get back in the groove before the postseason and not wait. You know what I mean? Like, don't get them back too early, don't get back too late kind of thing.
Yeah.
And just also hopefully that pitching kind of gets back to where it was, because that was our strength. And it's like, man, it looks like every time I'm watching now, we're getting lit up in the first and second inning. You know what I mean?
And Will, to your point, Will, I mean, we can talk about, the injuries, we can talk about the fielding, we can talk about the sticks cooling off. But when you look at the last 2 weekends, Gamecocks 1-5 in SEC play. When you look at the last 2 weekends, these are the numbers that I think tell the story and that jump out. South Carolina starting pitchers over the last 2 weekends, 27 1/3 innings pitched, 30 earned runs, 37 hits, and a 9.87 ERA. I understand that fielding hasn't been perfect, but when you're getting that type of starting pitching, you just don't have a chance in this league. You simply don't. You're putting so much pressure on your offense, which has been so good this year. And I mean, they haven't been great the last 2 weekends, but they've been good enough to go better than 1-5. And that's the point I've made in these game ones, with Will Sanders, for example. Like, I'm not asking you to throw a shutout, but I mean, you got to be a Friday guy, man. You got to be a game one guy. In a game one in the SEC, you're facing the other team's best. A lot of times, you're going to have to win a game 2-1, 3-2. You're going to have to outduel a guy. You're not always going to get 13 runs, 12 runs, 10 runs like the Yardcocks have done so many times in game ones. And if this team's going to make a deep run in the postseason, if they're going to get to Omaha, the starting pitching's got to be better. I mean, that goes without saying, but great pitching beats great hitting, especially when you get to the postseason. And we talked about this in the preseason, that if South Carolina was going to reach their full potential, a guy like Will Sanders is going to have an all-SEC caliber year, in my opinion, an all-American caliber year, arguably. And he hasn't been anywhere near that. It's a damn near miracle how good they've been this year with how porous he's been in that game one slot. If you want to be totally honest, I'm not trying to beat up on him, but it starts there. It sets the tone for the weekend. So all three of these starting pitchers, back-to-back weekends, the numbers tell you, but they've been abysmal. And it's got to get fixed and get fixed in a hurry, because if you don't have that starting pitching in this league, I don't care how good your offense is, man, you simply just don't stand a chance.
Yeah. And coming into 2 weeks ago, I mean, our team, our ERA was like 2.50 or something. It was under 3. I don't know what it is now, but it was the strength that people were worried about. You couldn't get into our bullpen. It didn't matter where you got, because, we just got arms everywhere. And I know we still do. It hadn't changed. It's just, we got to get that momentum back, that swag back. And hopefully, do we have a midweek this week? Or
we do. We play North Florida tomorrow at 4:00. So I think it'll be for sure a great opportunity for this team to bounce back, get some confidence, if you will. So North Florida tomorrow.
And then Arkansas this weekend.
And then Arkansas for 3 this weekend, 7:30, and 3:00.
Yeah, we really need to get back and at least get 2 out of 3. And I know Arkansas is a really good club, but we gotta get back on the winning side of things, because what is there, 2 series after that? Is that it?
So there's only 2 left.
2 more series after Arkansas.
You've got
2 left.
2 left, period.
Arkansas,
so you've got at Arkansas and then Tennessee at home, and we go into the SEC tournament.
Yeah. So I mean, there's not a lot of time left to get right, so we need to get right. And quickly on to another thing before I get off here. I heard the guy comment earlier about Logan Diggs. That would be a huge pickup.
Mm-hmm.
Is there 1 or 2? I think there was another running back we were possibly looking at, right? Is there somebody else?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you.
Okay. I thought there was somebody else we're looking at, but we really do need to pick up a running back. I hope that we get that kid, because, he did have a good game against Clemson last year and a pretty good game against us. I think he had that 80-yard catch on us in the bowl game. But that would be a big get. It'd be a big hole to fill. But I'll jump off here, Chris. I'll talk to you later.
Will, I appreciate the call, man. Thank you so much. And yeah, great stuff. Will from Dirty Myrtle, as always. Guys, I mean, again, you look at the past 2 weekends and you can nitpick the hitting. You can nitpick the field. I mean, the fielding has not been great. I mean, any weekend where you give up an inside the park home run, I don't think anybody's going to say, well, you had a good weekend in the field. I don't think anybody's going to say that. You're just not. But the pitching's been so bad. The pitching has been so bad. It's been so abysmal. Will Hall says, I think 3-3 in SEC, playing a couple wins in the SEC tourney will keep us in the top 8 conversation. Yeah, well, I mean, listen, here's the thing. And I know, I'm having a conversation this morning with a good buddy of mine. He's talking about, Clemson's going to host and we're not going to host anymore. And I'm like, just take a deep breath, man. Listen, the same, and this is, I talked about this on the podcast today, that, it's not popular in the content world to sort of fall somewhere in the middle. Like, being extreme one way or the other is what drives up views and drives up clicks and whatever. And that's fine. But I try to stay even keel, just the same way I felt like we weren't just going to go undefeated and win every game. We were beating everybody up. We're not going to lose every game we have left. We're going to be fine. Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Robbie Davis, Zaxby's Hall of Famer.
Robbie Davis, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good on this Monday. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, my friend. I appreciate you asking. What's going on?
Okay. This weekend obviously did not go as expected, okay? I know I called for the sweep, okay? My youngest brother was giving me crap because I picked us to sweep because he was here this weekend. And I told him the same thing I tell everybody. It's just a prediction. Just because I say we're going to sweep doesn't mean it's going to happen. Because, like I've always preached, you still got to go play the games, and we just did not play well all weekend long. And I knew at some point we would hit a slump. I just didn't know when we would get in a slump. And we just got to figure out what got us to the point that we're at and go back to doing that. Plus, I think if we get those three guys back, I think we'll be okay. We get Wimmer, Gillis, and who else is it?
Wimmer, McGillis, and Talmadge LeCroy. Yeah.
Yeah. If we get those three pieces, we really could have used them this weekend. Because it took me a second to realize why Braswell was batting second. I was like, why is Braswell batting second? He normally doesn't bat second. And then I was like, oh, wait, we must have some injuries. So that's probably why he's batting second.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw the list pop up of the injured players, and I was like, oh, crap. No wonder we're playing like garbage. Mm-hmm. And I think it shows how important those three pieces are.
I mean, for sure. I mean, any team in college baseball that were to lose their starting third baseman, their starting shortstop, and their starting second baseman, and their game 2 starting pitcher, you're going to feel some effects of that. Like, it's going to happen. And I think, listen, I think Braylon Wimmer is the biggest loss of all. I don't think people are giving that enough credit. That, I mean, he was a dude coming in this season. He's a glue guy. I mean, he's just a dude that, holds your ball club together. That, I mean, he's a huge piece. I mean, Talmadge LeCroy is a nice piece. Will McGillis is a nice piece, but they've been winning without him. But no Braylon Wimmer.
Yeah.
I think people underestimate how big of an impact he has. Let me turn the combo to this, Robbie. And I speak to you and everyone. And maybe this is me looking at it through garnet glasses and trying to put a positive spin on it. Could I argue that this slump is the best thing that could have ever happened to the Yardcocks? Now, I say that because if on the other side of this, we talked about the hot, cold, hot theory that the 11.7 boys have. Shout out to them. But the hot, cold, hot theory. In about a month or so, if South Carolina's playing their best baseball in a super regional, punches their ticket to Omaha, we just might look back and say, you know what? I'm glad Carolina got cold when they did. Now, this is all assuming that on the other side's the hot streak, but maybe, just maybe, this is a blessing in disguise. And this is like the best thing that could have happened to this club. I'm not saying that it's good to lose, fun to lose. I'm frustrated, but I'm not hitting the panic button because if you understand how baseball works, you know that these things do tend to happen. And so if South Carolina can once again get hot, play their best baseball, get healthy, you could argue that this might be one of the best things that could have happened to this ball club, as crazy as that sounds.
And we've shown enough this year that when we are healthy and we're playing our type of baseball, we are one of the top dogs in college baseball. No matter how this season shakes out, we still don't know. We still got tomorrow night, and then two more weekend series, and then the regular season's over. And I've heard all my coaches in my life tell me it ain't about how you start, it's about how you finish. You can start well and play well, but can you finish well? And I think we have got the pieces to finish very, very well. We just gotta get those those pieces back, brush ourselves off, and just keep on moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And Kingston said this, by the way, on Wimmer, LeCroy, McGillis. I think all three guys are hoping to play next weekend. Whether that comes to pass, we'll see. I would think all three are hoping to start playing again next weekend. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Even if you just get one back, I mean, obviously they're not going to throw guys in there unless they're 110% healthy. But, you hope sooner rather than later those guys get in the lineup. Robbie Davis, hey, Zaxby's Hall of Famer. Appreciate you, my man. Always a pleasure to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure.
Be good,
All right,
Robbie.
buddy. You have a great rest of your Monday. I'll try. No promise.
Yeah, man. We'll talk soon.
All right.
All right, brother. Take care. Great stuff from Robbie Davis as always. And yeah, guys, again, maybe it's a positive spin zone, right? Maybe it's the garnet and black glasses coming out, if you will. But you're going to get caught. That's why, listen, I think that's why you didn't see South Carolina slide so far in the rankings. D1 baseball still looks and says, this is a good ball club. They're in a slump right now. Let's jump to the phone lines.
Call from
Justin.
Hey, Justin, what's up, man? How are you?
Doing good. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you asking, man. What's going on?
Hey, Chris, how was the beach on the cruise, man?
The cruise was great, man. We had a good time. I appreciate you asking, but I'm happy to be back on the home front, on home soil, and getting back after it, man. But I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, and Chris, I'll be busy too, my friend. I'll be covering gay customers and I'll be helping when I got a second job now, Chris. I'll be helping Colbert stores lot now.
Okay, nice. You staying busy then. You're staying busy. Hey, being busy is a blessing, man. I'd love to hear it.
Yep, and Chris, I finished up my cosplay at the store event last Saturday. I did good.
I love to hear that, Justin. I love to hear it.
Yep, and Chris, the bad news is our baseball team says we just got swept, and you don't see soccer get swept too much, do you, Chris?
No, that was the first time, actually, I think Kentucky swept South Carolina since 2012. And obviously, first time we've been swept all year, and it sucks. It sucks, man. It's a shitty feeling. I mean, there's just no question. It sucks. It's just no way to put it. I don't know what else to say. Bad weekend all the way around. I mean, I talked about that on the podcast this morning, man, that, I know the starting pitching you look at, I mean, that's the real black eye right now. But I mean, this past weekend against Kentucky, nothing was good enough. The pitching, the hitting, the fielding, the coaching, none of it. It's a bad weekend all the way around. And what you hope for from this weekend, it's a weekend where everyone will stop, look themselves in the mirror, take accountability and say, all right, what are we going to do about it now? So what now? What is the mentality? And, you look at it this weekend, you don't look at it as like, oh my God, we got to play Arkansas. You look at it as, hell yeah, we get to play Arkansas. What a great opportunity for us to, change the narrative, because all it takes is one weekend. Man, you go win 2 of 3 this weekend at Arkansas at Baum. Guess what happens? The narrative goes back to, South Carolina was cold. They're still a really good team. Look at the way they responded. That's all it's going to take, man. Just respond the right way. That's what I'm saying. I'm not freaking out, not hitting a panic button. This is the same team that took it to LSU, that swept Florida. This is the same exact team, man. This is the same exact team. So I think we'll be fine. I think we're a banged up ball club right now that's in a slump, and it is what it is, and great teams go into slumps. And I think, again, you look at the D1baseball.com rankings, that's the reason why you didn't fall, right? That's why you did not fall far, is because I think D1 Baseball sees that, hey, I mean, they got swept. It doesn't mean South Carolina's all of a sudden just a terrible ball club. They're having a rough go right now. Not a terrible team. But we do have to respond quickly. We've got to respond quickly, because if you keep losing, obviously, they'll drop you right back down. So big weekend. We're taking on the 3rd-ranked Arkansas Razorbacks. And, of course, you take on Tennessee, who has been red hot, but just lost 2 or 3 to Georgia, and they're abysmal on the road. So that'll be a great opportunity as well to, at minimum, win 2 of 3 at home. So you can still close this season strong. You can still close this season strong with 2 SEC weekends and 2 midweeks remaining.
Oh, yeah. And, Chris, I agree with you. And, Chris, the thing about soccer baseball, hey, Chris, soccer should be better than this, right? Because you can't be losing to these unweight teams. It's BS. It's nuts,
I mean, it's just baseball, man. It just happens. I don't know what else to tell you. It just happens. Ironically enough, man, I was looking over at this. I've got this 2010 national championship banner thing hanging up for the baseball team. It's got every game on it from that 2010 season. You want to know something funny? That 2010 team lost 2 of 3 to Kentucky. Ironically enough, the next weekend they played at Arkansas and they swept. So We'd love to see that result. And by the way, the final SEC series of that year, South Carolina lost 2 of 3 to Florida. So the Gamecocks went into the postseason, losing 2 of their last 3 SEC weekends. And oh, by the way, they went to Hoover and went 2 in barbecue, lost both games. That team won the national championship.
Wow.
So you just never know. You just never – you can't sit here and say, well, we're closing it out slow, so, we're just doomed. That's just not how this game works. This game is crazy, man. Expect the unexpected. It sucks. We all know that, but it's not – don't put the nail in the coffin. It's we're not even remotely at that point. Don't put the nail in the coffin. There's so much baseball still to be played. As long as you don't completely implode, this team's at minimum still going to be hosting a regional, and you give South Carolina baseball a chance at Founders Park in the postseason, I like those odds. So we got a long way to go, man. We got a long way to go, but obviously this past weekend was frustrating, but don't hit the panic button. That's all I would say.
Oh, yeah, I agree, Chris. Hey, Chris, hey, hey, look. Hey, Chris, look, I love to see us win no World Series, but I'm not sure Marquez has got to do it. And it's been a long time since we not hit that hump yet,
Which hump are you talking about? Winning the national championship?
Yeah, we can't get over this hump in baseball,
Bro, we got to get over the hump of just getting back to Omaha. So, yeah. We got to get over that hump first. So, from there, winning the national championship, we'll see if we can make a run in Omaha. But just get to Omaha. You get to Omaha, your season's a success. Bottom line. That your season, you had a great season. Whether you win the national title or not, you get to Omaha, you had a great year. Right? You had a great year. So I think we're still in a position. We need some guys to step up. We need some guys to get their heads out of their asses more than anything. We need more from certain guys. God, we need more from Will Sanders, man. This team right now, when I look at this team, every one of these teams, right, they're in the top 10, whatever, every team right now that has Omaha aspirations has got some sort of hole on their ball club or some sort of deficiency. It's baseball, like everybody does, right? You can nitpick everybody and pick 1 or 2 things that this could hold them back, that could hold them back. Is this going to be something that is, deters them in the long run from making a serious run and winning a national title? When I look at the Gamecocks, I know the defense has been inconsistent, but the number one thing that I look at until this changes, this is what I see. This team lacks a true ace. This team lacks a true ace. They don't have that big-time frontline guy right now because Will Sanders ain't it. Till he proves me otherwise, he ain't it. He's not it. He's got the potential to be it. He's got the stuff, but he hasn't pitched like it. Kyle Peterson said on the broadcast yesterday, he's got to start pitching like a Friday guy, man. He's just not doing it. He's had flashes here and there, but God, I don't remember. Has he had a dominant start at all this year? It doesn't feel like. I guess the Florida game, game 1 was a dominant start. But even that thing could have went sideways in the first inning. It damn near did. He has not been good enough. And for this team to maximize their potential and get to Omaha, he's got to be the dude, man. He's got to turn it on. I don't know if he can flip that switch or not. But if he can't, I just do not think this team is going to get the most out of its potential.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. And Chris, like you said, man, they also changed too, Chris. There's going to be some big trouble in baseball, huh, Chris?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're going to be in trouble if we don't get more. Justin, I appreciate the call, my friend. Always a pleasure chatting with you. Great to hear from Justin. Of course, Will Hall says this conversation has been therapeutic. Thank you so much, Will. I appreciate you. Again, I was looking at this yesterday, Will, and it does give you some perspective. In case you missed it, the 2010 team closed the season up like this. They lost 2 of 3 at Kentucky. The following weekend, ironically enough, they went to Arkansas, and they swept. If that happens this weekend, I might start to say the stars are aligning. Either way, though, the next weekend, the final SEC weekend of that 2010 season, they lost 2 of 3 at home to the Florida Gators. Then went to Hoover and went 2 in barbecue, lost both games, and that team won the national championship. So, you never know. You never know in this game. You never know. This is still a really, really good ball club. Just because we were 32-4 and were unbeatable a couple of weeks ago, that didn't mean we were a shoo-in to win it all. And just because we've lost back-to-back SEC weekends, and just because we got swept this past weekend, and just because our starting pitchers haven't pitched worth a damn the last 2 weekends, guys, that doesn't mean we're not going to host a regional. It doesn't mean that we're just doomed for we're not going to get out of our own regional. It doesn't mean the season is doomed. As tough as it is in baseball, one game, one series does not define your entire season. And the hope is that, like that 2010 team, this team is going to get hot when it matters most. They're going to win anyway, and they're going to find a way to make a deep postseason run because this team has the potential to do so. We've seen it all year long. Guys, let's go ahead and jump into our first break. On the other side, I want to continue to hear from you. More your questions, comments, calls, and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. All right, guys, we're back. Taking your questions, comments, calls. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377 here on this Monday, May the 8th, 2023. Todd Smith, what's going on, my guy? Appreciate you tuning in. Lynn Turner, what'd you miss? We just been talking South Carolina baseball. So just been talking Yardcocks. I'm surprised we've made it this far in the show without discussing some of the football stuff that came out of the weekend. I know it's not specifically like on field or from Coach Beamer or anything relating to this is all gambling. So I guess if you're not into gambling, you don't really care. But DraftKings dropped their over-under win totals for the 2023 football season. And of course, guys, we got Mark Rogers of the Voice of College Football joining the show today at 1:15. I'll get his full thoughts on that. Also, game of the year lines from FanDuel. So you can go ahead and already put action on these games. I know it's crazy. Some of you think it's absurd, but it is what it is. There's some early value to be had as well. These are the over-under win totals, though, for the 2023 football season from DraftKings. They've got Georgia at 11.5. Again, of course, it's over-under. Georgia, 11.5, Alabama, 10.5, LSU, 9.5, Tennessee, 9.5, Arkansas, Ole Miss, and A&M are all at 7.5, Kentucky, South Carolina, Mizzou, Auburn, and Mississippi State all at 6.5, so 4 teams at 6.5. You got the Florida Gators at 5.5, and then Vanderbilt at 3.5. And of course, our attention will go directly to that South Carolina number. 6.5. Over under 6.5 wins this season. And I guess my question is this. Am I sitting here telling you or telling anyone that South Carolina is going to challenge Georgia and win the SEC East? I am most certainly not. But in Shane Beamer's first 2 seasons, the Gamecocks have hit the over on the Vegas win total. My question is this. What does Shane Beamer and South Carolina have to do to get some respect nationally? I mean, what do they have to do? How many times does Shane Beamer have to defy the odds as the Vegas underdog to get a little bit of love? Like, what more do they have to do? Because we saw it all year last year. All year last year. Gamecocks are a 22-point underdog. Doesn't matter. 16-point underdog. Doesn't matter. 10-point underdog. Doesn't matter. Time and time and time and time again. Especially when it comes to these over-under win totals. 2 years in a row, you've smashed the over. I think you were 3.5 in 2021. Beamer's first year. You win 6 regular season games, 7 with a bowl game. Last year, you're over under 6.5. You win 8 regular season games. 7.5 would have made sense to me. 7.5 would have made a ton of sense. 6.5, it feels disrespectful once again. It feels disrespectful once again. I am not saying that South Carolina is going to challenge Georgia. I'm not saying they're going to win 10 games. But get to 7 wins? Get to 7? With Spencer Rattler and Juice Wells back, arguably the best duo in the SEC? I mean, I know there's question marks. We all know there's question marks. But that 6.5 number, I just, what does Shane Beamer and Gamecocks football have to do to start getting a little bit more respect? And I guess I know the answer to my own question. Keep winning. Win. You win 8 or more this year, I think you'll start to see that respect come and the narrative change in Vegas. So, anyways, Jacob E. makes a good point. Not lose to Missouri. And to be fair, though, because I always give you both sides of the argument, right? You can see it from all sides. There are different perspectives to see this thing from. On the flip side, because these win totals, I'm pretty sure they don't count a bowl game, right? I'm pretty sure the bowl game is irrelevant to the over-under win total. South Carolina, it looked like, was going to finish in the under. It looked like they were going to hit the under. Right? And sure enough, they close out the season, beat Tennessee, beat Clem Sucks. The rest is history. Mark Kingston. Let's see. Mark Kingston and Jay Phillips on 107.5 The Game. McGillis and LeCroy could be in the lineup Tuesday, tomorrow. Wimmer is getting close. Mentioned next midweek. Jerzenbeck getting evaluated today. Veach was out with a sore arm or has a sore arm. He felt better on Sunday. Tippett dealing with a wrist injury, and Noah Hall is nowhere close. I don't know why they're just not willing to say Noah Hall is out for the season. We've heard that from multiple people. I don't know why they're not willing to say that. It's whatever. It doesn't matter to me, but I don't know why they're just not willing to say. I don't know why they're not willing to say that. Either way, maybe he's not. Anyways, though, okay. So there's your full injury report. McGillis LeCroy could actually be in the lineup tomorrow, which would be huge. I mean, I think it's one of those things though, where if they're anything less than 100%, if they're anything less than 100%, you obviously don't throw them in there. So Brian Dean says South Carolina takes 2 of 3 from Arkansas. You heard it here first. I hope we land Diggs. Brian Dean, first thing, 2 of 3 from Arkansas. I could see it. Brian, listen, I know some people are going to say you're crazy. Brian Dean, I don't think you're crazy at all. I don't think you're crazy at all, man, because baseball is a game in which things like that happen, man. Things like that happen. You know, it's not the craziest thing in the world. It's not. It wouldn't shock me at all if South Carolina did that. Brian Dean also says, I hope we land Diggs. I hope we land Diggs also, my guy. Lynn Turner, I'm excited to see the defensive line play now with some work with our new T-Rob. Indeed. Trayvon Robertson going to be awesome. Jacob E., it's the inconsistency in our wins as to why the total is so low. Somehow lost at home to Mizzou and then got blasted by Florida, then turned it around for 2 unlikely wins at the end of the season. Jacob, I agree with you. I agree. Obviously, what I was speaking on earlier, why does South Carolina not get more respect? I mean, I would have put the number at 7.5, Jacob, personally. I think that's the number when you're talking about getting even money on both sides. I would have put 7.5. I guess here's where I fall on it, though. 6.5, does it make sense? I guess you can say it does, but it would stun me if Carolina finished with 6 wins. It would stun me. It would. With Spencer Rattler and Juice Wells. Now, if injuries happen, but if this team stays healthy for the most part, I will be really surprised if they don't win more than 6 games. I'll be really, really surprised. I will. So, I think 7.5 would have been a number that made a lot more sense, but, I'm not a Vegas sharp, so what do I know? So, Jacob E. says over 6.5 seems like free money. It really does. It really does. Brian Dean, Chris, keep being awesome with the content. To hell with the haters. I appreciate you, Brian. You're the man. Thank you. Again, guys, Mark Rogers, voice of college football. He'll join the show at 1:15. Guys, if you ever miss anything on the Daily Crow, you can check us out via the podcast version of this show, which drops on our Spurs Up Show podcast feed. Just search The Spurs Up Show on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. This drops every single day at 3 o'clock. Guys, with that being said, though, today, please forgive me. This is most likely, it's definitely going to drop a little bit later because I've got to leave immediately following this show and head to Columbia to do our interview with Brad Lawing. So if you don't mind, I appreciate your patience. For those who tune into the podcast, I will get it out as soon as I possibly can. But obviously, getting down there, that is priority number 1. Taking care of the interview, that's priority number 1. And I appreciate you guys, your love and your understanding. Let's see here. Jacob E. Sanders' best start was in 3 short innings against LSU and Florida. Outside of that, it's been less than stellar. It has been less than stellar, Jacob E. It has. It has. It has. I said it. I said it before the season, guys, that if South Carolina was going to maximize their potential and make a run, they needed Will Sanders to be at their best. So the fact that you're ranked, if you just showed me Will Sanders' numbers, guys, If you'd have showed me Will Sanders' numbers in the preseason, if you'd have been like, this is what Will Sanders has done to this point, what is the Gamecocks record? Dude, I would have said we were probably a 30-win team and you know, we've got 12 wins in the SEC right now and just fighting for postseason play. I really would have. So it's honestly like stunning. It's stunning we are right now with the way he's pitched. It's stunning, to be honest. Ruben Nation, what's going on? Joseph says, I haven't always been crazy on DK, but listen to him talk, man. He was meant to be a running back. What did he say, Joseph, that makes you say that? I didn't hear his interview with whoever it is that you're talking about. Brian Dean, if our O-line dominates, we could have anyone playing running back. I mean, it does come to the big uglies, but not all running backs are built equally. I think we all agree with that. They're not all built equally. Anyways, guys, busy content day. Appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much again for the continued love and support. Means the absolute world, man. Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much. Let's see. Brian Dean says South Carolina goes 9-3. Brian Dean, I will drop my full predictions. Of course, early July, the week following July 4th, that's when I'll drop my predictions. 9-3 though. Brian Dean's locked in 9-3. Oh, by the way, that brings me to, of course, the game of the year spreads. So let's jump into those. Our good friend SEC Mike dropped these. Let's see. Let's get into it. I will read off the Gamecock one specifically first, and then we'll talk about some of the other games. So South Carolina, 4 games. 4 spreads are already out there for the Gamecocks 2023 football season. You first start South Carolina, North Carolina in Charlotte. UNC is now a 2-point favorite in the game. They were a 1-point favorite. It felt like all offseason. Now they are a 2-point favorite. South Carolina at Georgia. The Bulldogs are a 24-point favorite over the Gamecocks. 24. Goodness gracious. South Carolina at Tennessee. Tennessee is a 13-point favorite over the Gamecocks. And finally, Clemson at South Carolina. The Tigers are a 6.5-point favorite in Williams-Brice Stadium. Which of those 4, I would say, do you most disagree with? Which of those 4 do you most raise an eyebrow at? Right? 4 games. The Gamecocks are underdogs in all 4 of them that have dropped early. Gavin, we do not know when Diggs will make his decision. Again, Gavin, we will have J.C. Sherburne on the show later this week. I'm sure he will fill us in with a lot of intel on everything going on with the Notre Dame transfer. So, Joseph says, I also just have that much faith in Loggins and the coaching staff. DK said he's just now getting 100% healthy. We'll see. We'll see. I still, Joseph, to your point, we all love Dakereon Joyner. I would still say the Gamecocks do need a proven running back. They do. They do. Todd Smith. Hey, Chris, has anyone heard anything else about possibly Jordan Burch coming back? I've heard nothing new on that. I doubt that actually happens. There's so many loopholes that I think, Todd, he would have to jump through. I don't see that happening. I don't see it happening. Brian Dean. Yeah, I think when you measure height and size, Brian, I would say Dakereon Joyner is the biggest running back we have, but Mario Anderson's a big kid. So I know he's shorter, but he's a stocky back, no doubt. Brian Dean says South Carolina beats Tennessee by 10 points. Lynn Turner Dogs are a 24-point favorite with an unproven quarterback. Lynn, that's just how good Georgia is. A lot of folks, Lynn, will say, who's playing quarterback for Georgia? Their response, it doesn't matter who's playing quarterback for Georgia. They're surrounded by the best talent in all of college football. I mean, I would agree with you. 24 feels crazy. 24 feels absolutely crazy, man. 24 feels nuts, but that's how good Georgia is. That's just how good Georgia is, the way they've recruited. The other big games, the spreads, for those of us that love SEC football, Utah, 10-point favorite over Florida. LSU, Florida State's a pick 'em. That's week 1 in Orlando. Alabama, 7.5-point favorite against Texas. A&M, a 6.5-point favorite against Miami. Tennessee, 7.5-point favorite at Florida. LSU, a 9-point favorite at Mississippi State. Alabama, a 16-point favorite against Ole Miss. I love the Rebels there. LSU, a 12.5-point favorite against Arkansas. A&M, a 3-point favorite against Arkansas and Arlington. LSU, 4.5 at Ole Miss. Georgia, 18.5 at Auburn. Bama, 9.5 at Texas A&M. Bama, again, 18-point favorites against Arkansas. Tennessee, 9.5-point favorites against A&M. LSU, 17-point favorites against Auburn. Bama, 10-point favorites against Tennessee. Georgia, 21.5-point favorites against Florida and Jacksonville. Ole Miss, 3.5-point favorite against A&M. Bama, 7-point favorite against LSU. Georgia, a 19.5-point favorite against Ole Miss. LSU, 16.5-point favorites against Florida. Georgia, 7.5 at Tennessee. Ole Miss, 1.5 at Mississippi State. Alabama, 14-point favorite at Auburn. LSU, a 10.5-point favorite against Texas A&M. And Florida State, a 9.5-point favorite at Florida. So those are early game of the year SEC point spreads, if you will. Gavin, what other positions do you think we can fill using the portal? Brian Dean says we're looking at the edge rusher from Syracuse. Yeah, that's definitely one. I mean, Gavin, I think we all know the positions of need right now. Offensive line would be great, but edge and running back, those are the top two. So I'm sure Shane Beamer and company are hard at work. We know they are, right? Because Diggs was just visiting. So a lot of visitors taking place right now, and the transfer portal's popping, and I'm sure you will see a welcome home or two upcoming here very, very soon. But yeah, guys, when you look at those game of the year, you know, I don't know. The one that jumps out, you know, I guess Georgia, you hate to even doubt the Georgia Bulldogs in Athens. That'll be a really, really tough one. How do we feel about South Carolina being a 2-point underdog to North Carolina? Like, do we feel like North Carolina, the battle of Spencer Rattler and Drake May? I think those are two very similar teams. Two quarterbacks who are going into really big years for their respective careers. Both have new offensive coordinators, right? Both teams have questions on defense. Okay. So those are very similar teams in my mind. I could see that being a freaking track meet. Whatever the total is, it's probably not high enough. It's probably not high enough. But North Carolina getting the edge, that surprises me a little bit. That surprises me, right? Tennessee, a 13-point favorite against South. Guys, I can see it. 13 might be too much, but the fact that Tennessee's a favorite is not shocking to me at all. Tennessee's probably going to be a preseason top 10 team. Probably. At minimum, top 15. We'll say top 15. They're a preseason top 15 team. There's no question. And then you look at that last game. South Carolina hosting the Tigers at Williams-Brice Stadium. Clem Suck's a 6.5-point favorite. That might be the one that jumps out to me the most. That might be the one that jumps out the most. Listen, I like Garrett Riley. I admit it. I like Garrett Riley. I wish the Gamecocks would have gotten Garrett Riley. I'm not even going to front. I like Dowell Loggins a lot, but it wouldn't have upset me had Garrett Riley come to Columbia. Maybe Loggins will prove to be better. We'll see. But you're really putting that much stock in that guy? Touchdown better than Carolina? Are they calling last year a fluke? What the Gamecocks did should have won that game by 2 or more touchdowns? I don't know, 7, 6.5. That feels like a lot. That feels like a lot. Again, of course, all of these spreads and all of these lines, they will change. They will change. Brennan M., whatever the line is for Bama, Tennessee, hammer the Tide. No number is too large. Let's see. Will Hall, yes, you did hear in the podcast correctly. Live stream watch-alongs for all 3 games this weekend against the Arkansas Razorbacks. So 7 o'clock Friday, 7:30 Saturday, 3 o'clock on Sunday. We will do the live stream watch-alongs for all 3 games. Looking forward to it. Brian Dean says the only reason UNC's favorite is the location. Do you think so? Do you think so? I don't know. You know what I think it is? I think the reason that North Carolina's favored, I think Vegas looks at that game and they look at the 2 teams. Like I said, I think these teams are very, very comparable. I think they're very similar in regards to their makeup. I think you look at those 2 teams, and I think Vegas says this: which quarterback under a new OC do we trust more? Which quarterback do we trust more, not even to go win the game, but to not lose the game? And when I think you look at Spencer Rattler, he finished the season beautifully, but those first 10 games happened. They did. Those first 10 games happened. And so it's just like, which version of Rattler are you going to get? You get the best version of him, you got a great shot to win the ball game. But are you going to get that guy under a new OC? There's new verbiage. There's new things to pick up. Out the gate. They're going to have to be. They're going to have to be because you've got that retooled secondary. You got a defensive front that we don't know what the pass rush is going to look like. So I think that's why you see UNC get the slight edge. I think that's why you see UNC get the slight edge. Joseph says South Carolina will have a really strong secondary. I mean, I think it's going to be a solid secondary, Joseph. I just think, though, I like Marcellus Dial a lot. Dial Island. I like O'Donnell Fortune. I like O'Donnell Fortune. I just think, though, you'd be naive to think there won't be some sort of drop-off losing Cam Smith and Darius Rush. Like, I think it's almost disrespectful to those guys to say, oh, no, we'll be fine. We're not going to miss a beat. Like, those guys were really good, as is evidenced by the fact they were both selected in the NFL draft. Right? So, I don't know. It's anyways. Guys, let's go ahead and jump into a quick break. On the other side, we do have Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, joining us. So we will get into that conversation. And of course, after that, your questions, your comments, your calls, and more as we rock and roll here on TDC on this Monday, May the 8th, 2023. Appreciate you all tuning in, guys. We'll be right back after this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. All right, guys, we're back. Monday, May the 8th, 2023. Again, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. I hope you had a fantastic weekend, by the way, outside of the events that took place in Lexington, Kentucky. South Carolina dropping all 3 games to the Kentucky Wildcats. But we're going to switch gears just a bit here because, of course, every single Monday he joins us to talk South Carolina, SEC, and college football as a whole. Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, joins the show once again. Mark, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. It's great to see your face, hear your voice. I'm excited to chat with you. What's going on?
Chris, how's it going? Good to be here.
I'm glad to be back, man. I apologize last week. I was in the Bahamas and forgot to text you.
Oh,
yeah.
You're going to forget everything.
And I apologize for the miscommunication, but excited now. Every single Monday we're going to have you back on. I'm sure you were like, this guy has me on one time, and then we're the next week. What's going on? But no, really excited, my friend, because we got a lot to discuss here on this Monday with some stuff coming out over the weekend. Let's go ahead, Mark, and dive right into it. We'll stick with the SEC as a whole. Win totals have dropped from our friends over at DraftKings, and I was starting to kind of get that itch, Mark, because it feels like it's about this time every single year where the numbers drop, and I was sitting there thinking, when are these win totals and these spreads going to finally start to release? Well, here they are. DraftKings drops their 2023 SEC win totals, and I'll go down the list. Over-under wins. Georgia, 11.5. Bama, 10.5. LSU and Tennessee at 9.5. Arkansas, Ole Miss, and A&M at 7.5. Kentucky, South Carolina, Mizzou, Auburn, and Mississippi State at 6.5. Florida at 5.5. And Vanderbilt at 3.5. Of those win totals, Mark, of the ones I just mentioned, is there anything that immediately jumps out to you?
Well, it's not a surprise that Florida's at 5.5, but it just shows where the program is right now under Billy Napier. And he's done a decent job early in this offseason of recruiting. But of course, that's not going to impact this fall. But he's nabbed some 5 stars and he's off to a decent start there. But yeah, just that Florida football's at 5.5 is crazy. I've not seen the win total, so this is the first time I'm hearing this, and really nothing standing out other than, you know, how strong the sentiment for Georgia has to be to see 11.5. We almost never see, basically, you're betting an undefeated season, and Vegas usually is very conservative about those kind of projections. So schedule, no big non-conference games for Georgia, obviously, to be challenged there. The 11.5. Do they slip up once? That's pretty much what you're betting there. And the South Carolina number again?
6.5. 6.5.
Well, I would tend to go a little high on that and tend to bet that one over. That would be one I would grab. There's usually, as I scan this happens every offseason, where about 5, 6, 7 stand out to me. And if I'm going to put a dime or two on them, then I will try to go for a odd number selections and hope that I hit, you know, at least over 500, which has been pretty common to be able to, you know, maybe nab 5 out of 7, something in that range. I think I did that last year, 5 and 2 across the nation. But yeah, out of the SEC, I got to go South Carolina winning 7 ball games.
Well, you know what I think's too interesting, Mark, is it really just shows the depth of the SEC, because 8 of the 14 teams in the league, their win total is set as either 6.5 or 7.5, which I think we'd all agree, right? There's a bunch of teams. I mean, you've got Georgia, Bama, and we'll say LSU right at the top. Vandy's at the bottom. There's no doubt, and I think we're willing to kind of throw Florida at the bottom of the power rankings as well because of what they're going through. Everybody in the middle, though, I mean, 6 to 8 wins, 9 wins, maybe 6 to 9 wins, but 6 to 8 wins is in play for literally over half of the league. And it really just goes to show you the great depth of the conference when you got that many teams that can beat up on each other.
Yeah, there is no doubt. Again, we just saw the NFL draft 2 weekends ago, and the SEC, all the Big Ten put on a push this year. It was closer than usual, 62-55, and actually the Big Ten had more top 3 round selections. But the SEC, 17 consecutive seasons now in the NFL draft with the most selections. And I tell people this all the time. There is no coincidence that the recruiting rankings are what they are, with the SEC littering the top 20, 25, 12 or 13 out of the top 25. Pretty much everybody but Vandy and Missouri are in the top 25. And then 3 to 4 years later, those same guys are going to the NFL far more than any other conference in college. And then the results on the field in between line up too. It carries all the way through. There is no coincidence there.
Mark, let me pose this question to you because you mentioned the South Carolina number 6.5. And I was a little bit surprised when I saw that. Me personally, and I'm talking wanting to get even money on both sides, which is Vegas's goal, right? I think 7.5 would have made more sense in my humble opinion.
Yep.
I'll turn the question to you because, again, what I love is that you don't have any pre-existing bias. You certainly don't have any garnet goggles or anything of the nature. Let me ask you, Shane Beamer in his first 2 seasons at Columbia has smashed the over, right? They've hit the over both years. Shane Beamer has shown time and time again. They love Mark playing the underdog role. I mean, they embrace it. So many times they've beaten the odds and they've beaten Vegas. Why does South Carolina continue to struggle to get respect from Vegas, national media, and a program like, let's say, for example, Tennessee gets the benefit of the doubt? Why is that? Why is that the case?
So Vegas, they love the brand names. They love the tradition. They love the, again, they are always going to, to take it out of conference. Ohio State's the number 1 FPI team. They lost their quarterback. They lost a ton of production. They struggled on defense last year. They're number 1. They love brand names. The point spreads, and Georgia has now joined this group of Alabama and Ohio State. When you look at projected point spreads, going through the season, and once we get near the end of the season, Vegas will start to project matchups in the college football playoff, and it's interesting to see. They give so much credit, even in a down year for Alabama last year. They give Alabama just enormous credit, regardless, even though they lost the 2 games, didn't come close in a sense of making the playoffs, that they would be a favorite against anybody but Georgia. They give the same due to Ohio State, and now Georgia's earned it, of course, in the last 2 seasons. You would have thought that marquee wins, because that's what I think would wake people up. The Tennessee game, the Clemson game would wake people up. But I think the national narrative is really down on Clemson right now as, okay, you got to prove that you're elite again, because we just think that you've fallen.
I saw your ACC power rankings. You've got them number 2 behind Florida State.
Yeah. We knocked them down to number 2. Inexperienced quarterback. Mm-hmm. The defense lost some NFL talent up front, and it was not dominant last year. They were supposed to have a dominant defense. Like, they were supposed to be geared up to be one of the top defenses in the country, and they were good, but they weren't like real good, lockdown good. Their wide receiver play has been awful the last few years. So I'm not high on Clemson. They got to show me something. But South Carolina, even the Notre Dame game, they lost the game, but exciting game down to the wire. And you would think that they would start to turn the corner in the eyes of Vegas, but this might be one to take advantage of, folks.
Now, over the weekend also, Mark, sticking with the gambling side of things, but of course the college football side of things, FanDuel dropped some of their game of the year SEC point spreads, some updated point spreads, and I'll stick specifically with the games that include the Gamecocks because there's a lot of games here on this list. 4 games for South Carolina have been released, and of course, Mark, wouldn't you know it, Carolina is an underdog in all 4 of the games. Carolina is a 2-point underdog against UNC, a 24-point underdog at Georgia, a 13-point underdog at Tennessee, and a 6.5-point underdog to the mentioned Clemson Tigers. Of those 4, which of those stand out the most to you, and where would you like the Gamecocks the most out of the 4 games I mentioned?
Well, obviously, the deeper we get into the schedule, the more there is an unknown factor, what's going to happen with injuries. And obviously, teams are going to ascend and others are going to decline more than we expect. And to prove that point, before I specifically get to South Carolina, I noticed 4, 5, 6 years ago with these preseason publications, Athlon, Street and Smith's, fill in the blank, that while they provide tremendous information, their predictions are awful. And when I say they're awful, they just predict chalk. So they don't want to get embarrassed is what they don't want to have happen. They don't want to look bad. So they predict chalk. And I've looked at it from year to year, and this is becoming an off-season project for me, that they basically, aside from about 4 teams in the country, will predict everybody within about 1 game of what they did the season before. Because they don't want to try to break out and say, hey, this team's going to be a breakout team, or this team's going to decline. And now I've tracked it for about 5 years, Chris, and guess how many teams out of this, what is now 69 Power Fives with the 4 additions to the Big 12, but it was only 65 last year, 65 Power 5 teams. Guess how many either increased their win total by at least 3 or it decreased by at least 3. So we're talking significant. You know, you're a 9-3 team, you go to 6-6, you're a 3-9 team, you could jump to 6-6. How many out of 65 do you think their record changed by that much in one season from 21 to 22?
I'll go. That's a big change. I'll go 12 teams.
27.
Wow.
You know,
So
what
a lot
that
of
tells you?
shifting in college football. A lot of shifting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was surprised by that number. I've been tracking that number every year. It's usually more like 18 to 22, but it was 27 last year. Like 7 of the 10 teams in the Big 12 had that kind of jump or drop, because I think we get so locked into the elites stay the same 4 or 5. Like we think the whole nation stays like that, but they don't. There's a lot of change. So you got to find who is going to elevate or who's in decline. And those magazines don't do it. They're conservative and they don't want to be wrong. So they just throw those out. So I am constantly looking for, and I may actually force myself, because by nature, I think we're all pretty much conservative. We don't want to be crazy and have people, especially doing what we do, say, you know, you have no idea what you're talking about. How in the world could they be 10-2 this year? How could TCU possibly go 12-0 this year? Well, they just did it after 5-7. So they're obviously the prime example from last season. So trying to be kind of a visionary. So I'll take it now to the point spreads. The North Carolina one stands out for me. I just think South Carolina is a better football team than North Carolina. And they're a 2-point underdog in a neutral site, right? Charlotte?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay. South Carolina is, by my money right now, I understand the quarterback play there is phenomenal with Drake May. But if people really locked in on his performance last year, first of all, he doesn't play the competition that Spencer Rattler in South Carolina plays. I know that the numbers were so much better than Rattler, but he doesn't play the defenses week to week in the ACC. It's not even close. And down the stretch, he had his issues, and they did as well. They were not a good team down the stretch last year, while South Carolina is on the upsurge. So give me the 2 with South Carolina right out of the gate. And again, I'm more apt to say, hey, let's look at those early season games rather than week 10, week 11. I don't know. But Clemson at home with almost a touchdown.
Feels like a lot.
Yeah.
I'll say this too, by the way. I wanted to say this, Mark, to your point about like the preseason magazines and stuff like that. This is why I love my guy, Brett Ciancia of Pick Six Preview. Shout out to him. That I feel like he does go against the grain and make some bold predictions. I mean, I think 2 years ago he had North Carolina in his playoff. And of course, they literally lost week 1 to Virginia Tech. And I actually think last year he had Utah and they lost week 1 to Florida. So I think it might be a kiss of death, whoever he throws into his playoff. I don't know. But anyway, he's at least willing. He's at least, willing to make a bold prediction. But I feel like a lot of these magazine guys, and it is what it is, but I think a lot of them probably don't want to ruffle too many feathers because they are very reliant on relationships with coaches. And so, like, they don't want to burn that bridge by saying something outlandish because nobody wants to hear, right? Because nobody sees the downfall coming. And I think it's so funny when you see people talk about these win totals and over-unders. They're like, oh, well, I like this team. They're going to go over. Oh, I like this team. They're going to go over. It's like somebody has to have a bad year. Somebody is going to fall short of their expectations. everybody cannot win 8 games. It's just not mathematically possible, right? And nobody wants to spend the entire offseason because we all get so excited talking about college football. Nobody wants to hear for months on end, hey, by the way, your team's going to stink. You just don't know it yet. Like, nobody wants to hear that, right? So I get where the magazine guys are coming from, but it does become very, very monotonous. I don't really look at the magazines and lean on them for the predictions. I do like looking at the depth charts and stuff like that. And I think that's a cool thing. And obviously we just consume it because we're junkies, right? And it's like any bit of college football, content we can consume, we get after it. But this kind of leads me to this, Mark, and I know we'll have this conversation a lot going into the season, but you mentioned the UNC game and the questions with Rattler. And I mean, he was abysmal through 10 games. Let's call it for what it is. But to hear what you're saying and UNC being a favorite in that game, and it's like, I just continue to say that's why I think this is such a pivotal year for South Carolina and for Shane Beamer, because we talk a lot about like what Shane Beamer's done behind closed doors, changing the culture, changing the mindset in Columbia, taking this program to the next level. We talk about what he's done in the portal and recruiting, but you know what changes the culture, Mark, more than anything? And you know what gets respect on a national level more than anything? Winning games. Winning. That's what does it, winning. It doesn't matter. Everybody has great culture. Everybody does, right? Or at least they say they do. But winning on the field, that's what changes perceptions of your program. That's what creates tradition. It's what creates history. It's what turns your program from. Because I think this year, it's why we've talked about, Mark, getting to 8 or more is so important, because I think if you can do that, it's like, okay, South Carolina is turning a corner or has turned a corner under Shane Beamer. This is not the South Carolina of old. I fear like if you go under that 6.5, you go 6-6, or God forbid worse, people are going to look and say, that's South Carolina. Like, this is the same old 500 program, the same thing they've been for 100 plus years. Like, I think there's that type of pressure on this season.
At some point, you've got to deliver on proof of concept. You can't sell a dream and a vision forever. And so South Carolina, fortunately, for as much as it sucked to lose to Mizzou and score 10 points, and I remember diving in on that game and being like, man, this is awful. This is painful to watch this South Carolina offense. For as bad as that was, and then the Florida game, was that the 38-7 game?
38-6. 38-6
game.
Their lone touchdown in that game was a trick play on special teams. 0 offensive points in that game.
For as painful as those 2 weeks were, I would rather have those 2 with the 2 outstanding wins than chalk the entire season. And we beat bad teams and we lost to everybody good and got our butts kicked by 4 touchdowns by everybody good on our schedule, because that doesn't show growth and potential. Yeah, they had the letdowns. They had Mizzou and Florida, but Shane Beamer showed, look at what we can be. Look at what we are when we put it together. Hey, come play defense for us. We put up 38 on Notre Dame. We just needed a little bit more defense in that bowl game. We won't give up 45 if we can get some pass rush. Come play for us. He can sell vision. There's still that hunger and that growth process going, but we've done it. Okay, it wasn't a fluke, because you know what? We did it the next week again. So we just didn't do it. That Tennessee wasn't just like flash in the pan. Oh, the place was rocking. We did it. No, we turned around and we actually got off the deck. And I was concerned with South Carolina that next week, thinking, oh man, they are feeling good about themselves. They never beat Clemson. They're going to Death Valley the next week. No, we got off the deck. We stopped the party after Sunday. We got refocused. We beat Clemson. That's pretty impressive.
Now, Mark, when do your SEC power rankings drop? Because I was looking, it looks like you just started the power rankings on your YouTube channel, which is the Voice of College Football, correct? So let everybody know, because I'm curious to see them. Obviously, I watched the entire ACC video, which, by the way, it's crazy to me. You were talking recruiting in the SEC, and you had it was Virginia was down at the bottom. Virginia Tech was, my God, how far Virginia Tech's fallen as a program. Like, how poorly some of those ACC teams recruit is astonishing. Like, it's crazy. Anyways, though, SEC power rankings, when is that coming out?
So I actually am in the process of recording the Pac-12 right now. So I'm going to release at least 1, if not 2 per day. So it's going to be out in the next couple days. I want to keep the best for last, so people wait for the SEC and the Big Ten. So let's put them last. And yeah, so here in the next day or two.
How tough is it to rank those teams like 4 through 10 or 12 or whatever? I mean, like we mentioned, I mean, you see the win totals. It's just kind of put them up, shake them up in a bag, and throw them out there. I mean, any order would almost make sense, it seems.
And you know what the deal is. People are going to hold me to, just like they hold you to the April or May just power ranking, and remind you in September, even if you've corrected it and said, no, I've reevaluated in August, and I'll make my final predictions, of course, for the season, but there'll still be people that'll be like, oh, you had them 7th in the SEC in May. So calm down, people. It's fun. I really focus on the current information, so I just don't want to do power rankings like, okay, and here they are. But I want to give you some depth, some information in regards to transfers, who's going to make an impact. Again, the recruiting rankings, because about half of those players are on campus already and have already gone through spring practice. So looking at the new additions and what they could mean for these teams.
Mark, before I get you out of here, one last thing, and I'll talk about this on my airwaves early July when I lock in my predictions, and this will be sort of part of my commentary. The most important, quote-unquote, game of the season. Do you believe in most important games? And could I argue to you, I'm not saying this is going to be mine, but we were just talking about that Clemson game, Tigers, by FanDuel, a 6.5-point favorite, whatever. These rivalry games, they mean so much to these universities, right? Like if you don't win a conference, or if you don't win the national championship or a championship at all, like winning your rivalry game is like the next thing. I mean, the whole reason that like a Gus Malzahn lasted at Auburn, for example, he beat Alabama. Like that's why he was there. You know what I mean? So it's such an important thing. Or who was it at like Ohio State, Michigan? Like if you don't beat the rival in that one, you're just not going to have a very long career at either school. So could I argue that the Clemson game for South Carolina could potentially be the biggest game of the season?
Yes, you could, because, we've talked enough football, and obviously I've had you on my show a ton of times. So we've talked enough football for you to know that I'm pretty pragmatic. I'm pretty much the neutral. Let's be logical here. But college football is just soaked in emotion. That means something, the passion. And yes, rivalry means something. And it points to what I was just talking about with the 2 letdowns against Florida and Mizzou, because if that would have just been a chalk type season, that would have just had a feel of, okay, 8-4, that was nice. It was okay. It was okay on the black and white sheet of the record, the results and the standings. But man, that didn't really feel, did we have a really big moment? No, we didn't. Clemson beat us for the 48th year in a row. What's there? But no, you can look back even 10 years from now and say, either this was the start of something special, or, hey, that was kind of cool that for 2 weeks there, we were on fire and it didn't turn into anything, but that was fun for 2 weeks. Yes, definitely. There are games that mean more, and you have to live it. You have to talk it every day, and people go to work together. They talk to each other. They're all over social media, pinging the clowns that they love to argue college football with. But so, yeah, to get beaten down by Clemson again would have been expected. Nobody would have thought much about it nationally. They'd been, okay, Clemson beat South Carolina, of course. But to get that win, oh man, absolutely. There are more important games than others.
No doubt. It's going to be a lot of fun to discuss. Of course, we got a long off season ahead, but before you know it, my friend Mark, we'll be at SEC Media Days and then getting into preseason practice and then kickoff. We'll be right around the corner. I'm excited, Mark. Every single Monday, you and I talking about it, breaking it down, discussing it, all the storylines that take place over the offseason, my friend. I truly appreciate you taking the time. Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. And this time next week, Mark, we're going to dive into your power rankings, and we might have to grill you. I don't know. No, it'll be a good time. Can't wait to watch that and appreciate you and all your hard work, and looking forward to chatting next week, Mark.
Love it, Chris. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Take care. Great stuff. Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. Really, really great stuff. John Edwards says, what date will the 100 days to kickoff start? That is May the 25th, my friend. So that's actually the Thursday of SEC tournament week. Okay, so 2.5 weeks until 100 days to kick off. And of course, the countdown to kick off will start on social media. We'll post a countdown video every single day. Going to be a lot of fun. Guys, let's jump into one final break. On the other side, we'll fire back up the phone lines and we'll take your questions, your comments, your calls, and more on the other side of the break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. All right, guys, we're back. Final 15 minutes or so here in the Daily Crow. Taking your questions, comments, calls. 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. I want to say thank you to Mark Rogers for taking the time to chat. Great stuff as always. Check out the Voice of College Football on YouTube. Does a great job over there. Like I said, phone lines are open, 843-790-3377. Here on this Monday, as we a little bit of a therapy Monday, right? It's got a therapy Monday feel to it after the weekend that was South Carolina dropping all 3 games. All 3 games in Lexington, Kentucky. Something none of us, I think, saw coming. Just tough to say the least. Our good friend Ben Upton over at 11.7 drops his projected field of 64. He's got the Gamecocks as the 9 overall seed, so not a top 8 national seed anymore, but the 9 overall seed hosting East Carolina, NC State, and Air Force in their regional. He's also got Clemson as the 12 overall seed hosting Tennessee, Troy, and Sam Houston. What a regional that would be. What a regional that would be. The Clem Sucks Tigers. Madison, there are no fall tour updates as of right now. I will tell you, Madison, currently we are working on putting together the Beamer Ball to the Moon Tour shirts for the online store. Madison, we will have those on the online store. We'll have those available in black, garnet, and white. Really excited for that. We are working on those as we speak and should have those up by the end of the week. So just stay tuned. Really looking forward to it. And of course, guys, appreciate all the love and support on the merchandise side of the business. It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Let's see. Mears TTSN. Howdy, fellow SEC brothers. Gig 'em and God bless. How about a Texas A&M fan joined in? Love that. He says, y'all beat my Ags. We beat LSU. So technically, y'all beat LSU as well. I don't know if that's exactly how it works, but love you giving us the benefit of the doubt for sure. But no, Madison, we do not have the fall or the summer tour dates. We do not have those dates locked in as of yet. We do not have those updates or those dates locked in. It'll be a summer tour, by the way. Won't really be a fall tour. I wouldn't call July and August in the state of South Carolina fall. So it'll be a summer tour. The plan is to do that second half of July and throughout the month of August at all of the Carolina Ale House locations. We'll be really looking forward to getting back out on the road. Of course, we'll have the To the Moon Tour shirts for sale. Those will be for sale online as well at that point, but we will have them for sale on hand as well and probably have the Beamer Ball merchandise. I'm going to get some extra inventory, have that on hand at all of the tour events. So looking forward to that, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. But in the meantime, of course, Gamecocks baseball, 2 regular season SEC weekends left. Looking forward to closing this thing out the right way. And going to be a lot of fun, man. I think the Yardcocks are still in a really, really good position. I think the Yardcocks are still in a really, really good position to make a move end of season. Let's see. Guys, I don't normally do this. But let's see. No, it's all good. Never mind. We're going to go till 2 o'clock. I was thinking about getting out of here 10 minutes early, but I don't want to do that. We've got an hour and 45-minute drive to Brad Lowing's house. So I'm going to be a bit rushing getting out of here. Thought about maybe closing out 10 minutes early. I don't really want to do that, though. Dave Garrix is hammering the over for wins, looking for 3 straight. Dave, who do you normally play with? I'm curious. Do you have a book or do you go with like FanDuel, DraftKings? What do you do? If you don't want to tell me, that's totally fine. But yeah, Dave has hit the over and won 2 years in a row. I mean, listen, I think it's a good bet. I really think it's a good bet. 6.5. I mean, 2 years in a row, they've doubted the Gamecocks. I mean, dude, there's nothing Shane Beamer loves more than being the underdog. He loves it. Dude, he loves it. He thrives on it. He thrives on it, right? They thrive on that. So I will not be surprised at all if South Carolina hits that over total. It feels like free money on the Gamecocks. I mean, if you're going to make a bet, I think over's the bet to make. Bottom line. I think over's the bet to make. For sure. Guys, Gamecocks will take on the third-ranked Arkansas Razorbacks this weekend. Third-ranked Arkansas Razorbacks. Dave got the over on 6.5 with the bookie. Okay, got you. Got you, Dave. Makes a lot of sense. Makes sense. Got your own bookie. Love that. Madison, what's your biggest football game this season and why? Yeah, that's a great question, Madison. And I would say this too. I kind of teased it with Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, and you start talking, I won't lock in one. We'll do that in July when we talk about our biggest game of the season. But you guys might recall last year when I talked about that Arkansas game as the biggest swing game of the season. A lot of people labeled it the biggest game. I labeled it the biggest swing game. Not the most important, but it was the biggest swing game in the sense of if you were going to hit, I felt like 8 or more wins, or let's say 9 or more wins, right? If you were going to hit 9 or more wins, you had to have that Arkansas game. And that proved to be true. I think we have a tendency to make the most important game one of the first couple because we feel like that's going to set the stage for success throughout the year. Guys, I'm here to tell you this. Just because you beat North Carolina does not guarantee you're going to have a successful season. I think we'd all agree with that because you're going to play a lot of teams on this schedule, a lot of SEC teams that I think we'd argue are better than North Carolina. I think you could argue Mississippi State's better than North Carolina. Truly. So, I mean, there's a lot of teams in the schedule that are going to be better than UNC. So I've been having, I've been pondering what I'm going to think, what I'm going to say, what I'm going to lock in as my most important quote unquote game of the season. I'm starting to have second thoughts on whether it's actually UNC or not. Like, I think there are more important games on this schedule. For principle's sake, I'm not going to say Mizzou again because I said Mizzou last year and it didn't seem to matter. That's a huge game. We all know that. But I just don't know that it's the North Carolina game. Like, that's a very big game. It's a big game for many reasons. I mean, you want to start your season off on the right foot. It's huge for recruiting because both those schools recruit in that Charlotte area and, of course, in the state of North Carolina. But is it the most important game of the season? You could argue that it is, but I don't know that it is. I don't know that that's the no-brainer choice there because I think you could beat UNC and still go 7-5 very easily. You could beat UNC and maybe still go 6-6 and not have the season you want. So I don't think beating North Carolina guarantees a great season. But I will say this, I think it's a swing game of sorts. If you're going to win 8 or more, God forbid you're going to get to 9 or more, you got to beat North Carolina. You have to. So maybe it's not the most important game, but I view that UNC game kind of like the Arkansas game last year where you could argue it's the biggest swing game of this season. Because if you're going to reach those heights and you're going to maximize the talent you have and maximize this season, I just don't see you being able to do that without beating the Tar Heels in week 1. So I will say, and again, you could argue, is it the most important? Maybe it is. Maybe you could argue it is. I don't really know, guys. I have the freedom to change my mind. I will lock in what I think is my most important game early July, right? But I just don't know. I don't know if it's as simple as, UNC because it's the first game and we play an ACC team and it's a 50-50 ball game. I don't know. I don't know that it's that easy. I don't know if it's that simple. Dave Garrick says North Carolina must be destroyed. Dave Garrick says Spurrier went 6-6 his third year. 7 or more puts Shane ahead. Dave, but I think Beamer's got to win 8 or more to have more wins than Will Muschamp. Unfortunately, Dave, we all know this by now. Will Muschamp has the most wins of any South Carolina coach after 3 seasons, right? He does. What did he do? Won 6 in year 1, 9 in year 2, 7 in year 3. Beamer has won 7 in year 1, 8 in year 2, right? So he's at 15. Muschamp was at 22 wins. 22 wins, right? So to get to 23, you got to win 8 games. Will Shane Beamer do it? I know we all hope so, obviously, because I know all of us hate the fact that Will Muschamp has the most wins over his first 3 seasons at South Carolina. So Lynn Turner says we need to flush Champ out of the record books. I hear you. Yeah. And I think it's very doable. I think it's very doable, obviously, but anyways. Top 10 college football defensive line unit rankings per Jesse Simonton, a national college ball columnist on On3 Sports. He's got Georgia number 1, Michigan 2, Illinois at 3, Penn State 4, Bama 5, LSU 6, Iowa 7, Florida State 8, Clemson 9, and Ohio State at 10. Need to get back to that. Need to get back to that level of having those top tier defensive lines. Yep, need to. Absolutely need to. Gamecocks baseball ranked 9th in the Collegiate Baseball newspaper, top 25. So Gamecocks are still in the top 10. I was a little concerned we'd fall to 10th or maybe worse. So anyways, guys, 843-790-337. Just a couple of minutes left to go again. Thank y'all so much for the love, for the support, for tuning in today. Of course, podcast dropped this morning, episode 782, a full breakdown of everything that happened over the weekend, including baseball, gambling lines for football, win totals, way too early spreads, Diggs' visit to South Carolina, the Notre Dame running back transfer, your listener questions, a packed podcast. And, of course, Thursday will be another damn good one as I'm actually hitting the road today to have a one-on-one sit-down conversation with former Gamecocks defensive line coach Brad Lawing. Really excited for that. Looking forward to it. It's always an electric convo with Brad Lawing. I've gotten some great feedback on those conversations with Brad and really excited to chat with him. Of course, he coached Travian Robertson, who is now the Gamecocks defensive line coach. You know, he's got tons of thoughts on what happened last season with South Carolina hitting 8 wins in year 2 with Shane Beamer. So it'll be really, really great stuff. And, of course, TDC guys rocking all week long, Monday through Friday, noon to 2, a normal schedule. Really excited for that. And also, we got live stream watch-alongs for all 3 baseball games. Friday night at 7, Saturday night at 7:30, and then Sunday at 3 o'clock as number 6 South Carolina takes on number 3 Arkansas at Baum. Going to be a lot of fun. A huge, huge matchup as the Gamecocks look to bounce back. Let's see. Other than that, guys, again, truly thank y'all so much. Thank y'all so much, man, for the love, for the support. Shout out to the Big Cock Club. Love chatting with you guys, hanging out with you guys. We watched a couple of games in the Big Cock Club hangout this weekend. And, I mean, of course, we had a blast as always. And, guys, those that tune in to TDC in the podcast version, please be patient today because the second I hit in stream right here, I'm packing up. We're hitting the road so we can get to Brad Lawing's house on time for this conversation. Actually, with that being said, we've hit 2 o'clock. So let's go ahead, get out of here, guys. Again, thank you all so much. Appreciate you all tuning in. Stay tuned to all the content. Y'all have a great rest of your Monday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.